If we shadows have offended, think of this and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear, and this weak and idle theme no more yielding but a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend, if you pardon we will mend, and I am an honest puck, if we have unearned luck. Now to scape the serpent's tongue, we will make amends ere long, else the puck a liar call. So good night unto you all. Give me your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends. Taken from A Midsummer Night's Dream, one of my favourite of Shakespeare's plays. Welcome to Time Between Times storytelling. My name is Owen Staton, and welcome to episode 3 of this festival of Fable. A new story every day, all this week, especially for you. All done in aid of the Police Rehabilitation Centre at Flint House in Goring. I will put a link in the show notes. Please, if you can, donate something small if you are enjoying these tales. I am so happy with the feedback I've had so far, so happy that people are listening to these stories and becoming as invested in them as I have been. These are meant to open doors into these old tales, so you can once again explore them, as I once did. I love the Tylwyth Teg. As long-term listeners will know, many of my stories feature the fairy folk, the Tylwyth Teg, the very folk. These capricious creatures walk the wilds of Wales, fly through the sky, put curses upon those who they don't like, make you go to sleep and not wake for 100 years, take a baby and replace it with a changeling. But are they real? I think they are. I am a great fan of the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast with my good friend Joe Hickey Hall, and feel that I have had experiences in the past where perhaps I have stepped into the veil of the Tylwyth Teg. But one of the stories that amazes me the most about these, I came across as a small child in my grandparents' house. There was an old book. I can't even remember the title of it. But as you opened it, there inside was a picture of a young girl surrounded by the Fae. She was obviously from another world, another time, another age. The photo was black and white. There were garlands of flowers in her hair, and the fairies seemed to dance around her. And the writing underneath said that this was the first photo taken by the girls involved in the Cottingley Fairies. This awoke in me a lifelong love of all things fairy, and the idea that perhaps, just perhaps, they were there, in the forests, just outside of the places we lived. So let us go back and find out what these photographs were, how they came about, and why people are still talking about them to this day. But before we go there, sit back, my friends. Relax. Close your eyes if it's safe to do so, and take a few deep breaths. Imagine you are sat at your fireplace. The sun has been gleaming all day outside, and now it is just starting to settle into that evening time, that time between times. You could sit here and relax for the rest of the night, but that is not in your heart today. You get up. You go outside. You feel the fresh air on your face. You feel the breeze in your hair as you turn around and close your door and start to walk towards the forest. The trees are there like a great wall in front of you. The sun is still shining and seems to gleam and glitter off the top of the trees. You wonder how many people have passed this way over the years and seen this sight and been filled with wonder. You take a breath and step under the branches, under the eaves, onto the old forest path. You feel the leaves crunching underneath you. You feel the stone and the gravel of the path move and shuffle and scrunch under your feet. There it is in front of you, the old mossy tower. On a day like today, it seems even older and filled with legend. You walk through the babbling brook, feeling the cold water on your feet. As you move through the forest, you come across a small clearing. In there is a ring of stones, only a few inches tall. But all around them the grass has been moved, as if there are paths, as if something small dances here under the moonlight. It brings a smile to your face as you step into the clearing at the heart of the forest where the fire pit remains. All around it are your friends, friends from the past, friends from the future, friends that are there right now. Anyone you want to be here is here at this moment, because now is the time between times, the time when it's neither night nor day, but the sun has gone and the sky is grey, the time when the veil between our world and the fairy world grows wafer thin, so thin that for a moment, and just a few moments, you can reach into their realm, and for a few moments they can reach into ours. You see, now is the time that people see lights in the sky. Now is the time that people see ghosts. Now is the time that people see the Tylwyth Teg. The storyteller stands and begins his tale. His voice echoes through the clearing. It's like as if the trees themselves are listening, as he begins a story that happened 100 years ago and more, to two small girls, Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths. We go back to the year 1917, where Europe was ablaze. Cannon fire cascaded through the air in France, and Britain was sending its men in their millions to die. It was a dark time. The people at home would wrap themselves up warm at night, fearing the next day and the news it would bring. But these two girls, Elsie and Frances, there they were in the small village of Cottingley near Yorkshire. A beautiful, bountiful place, there surrounded by woodland, only a small number of old stone houses, and the stream that ran through it, called Cottingley Beck. Every day the girls would leave their garden, climb over the back fence, and make their winding way down the path to the beck, to play in the waters. As the sun started to set at the time between times, they would return, and to the dismay of their parents, they would always be soaking wet and covered in mud. Arthur Wright, Elsie's father, once shouted at them and said, "Why do you get so dirty, so filthy, so filled with mud?" And Frances looked at him and said, "It's because we play with the fairies down in the beck. They ask us to dance in the water. They make us sing our songs. We see them all the time, and we can't leave until this time when the sun sets." Arthur dismissed this, but the girls continued to use it as an excuse, so in the end he took his old camera, for he was a keen amateur photographer, and gave it to the girls and said, "Okay, if these fairies are there, why don't you photograph them?" The two girls looked at each other with excitement in their eyes. And the next day, as the sun rose, they grabbed the camera under their arm and bounded off over the garden, down to the beck. Returning once again at the end of the day as the sun started to set. They presented the camera to Arthur and said, "There you go. You'll see them there." As the girls went to bed exhausted and the sun set, Arthur went to his new dark room that he had prepared to make his photographs. And he placed the film in it and started to develop it. As the night grew darker and the hours passed, a figure slowly came into view on that film. He could see that there it was, Francis, looking straight at the camera. He smiled and thought to himself, what a beautiful photo. But then something made his heart beat as if it was going to burst from his chest. Because also in this photo were 4 fairy figures dancing around Francis. Amazed, he started to develop the second photo the girls had taken, and there he found a photograph of Elsie sitting in the woods with a hand sticking out and shaking the hand of a small gnome. He could not believe what he was seeing, and the next day challenged the girls, saying these photos must have been fake. But they just smiled, laughed, and said, "The fairies posed for the photos. What do you think?" The family thought nothing of it, and the girls continued to play. But one day the photos came into the possession of a psychical society that usually gathered to speak about contacting the dead that had been lost in the war. But you see, Elsie's mum had taken them there, and they came into the possession of Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes stories, who was amazed at what he saw. A glimpse into the other world, proof that fairy folk existed just beyond the area where we lived. They visited the girls, and 3 years after the initial photos they were taken, they were presented with another camera and asked to go down to the beck once more and take more photos. For weeks the rain fell and the girls couldn't go, but eventually they went down there, to the river, insisting that nobody followed them. And at the end of the day, they returned with 3 more photographs. The first one showed Francis looking sideways as a beautiful fairy bounded in front of her. The second one showed Elsie looking at some dancing fairies. And the last and the final 5th photograph showed a group of fairies gathered around a sun bath. Everyone who saw the photographs was amazed at what they could see. They were printed in the Strand magazine. They went all over the world. And although the girls tried to shun publicity and would not speak of it, everyone came to Cottingley to try and find the fairies, although none were successful. The year was now 1920, and the families of the girls tried to protect them, so there were no more photographs. Elsie and Francis moved away and lived abroad for many years, but the photos were never forgotten. So many people used them as hope that there might be the Tylwyth Teg. Others scoffed at them, saying they must just be card photographs placed in the ground. But it wasn't until the 1980s, when both girls were very late in life, that a reporter gathered them together and asked them about these photographs taken oh so long ago, where a war raged in Europe. But 2 young girls found contentment and imagination and story in Cottingley Beck. They admitted they had traced the fairies from an old storybook, placed hat pins behind them and stuck the figures in the ground. the simplest photographic trick of all, but it had fooled the world for over 60 years. But both girls turned around, and the photograph that just had the fairies and the sun bath, the fifth photograph, the one with no girls, they both swore to their dying day that was genuine, that was true, that was the Cottingley fairies in all their glory. And even though years have passed and the girls have long since gone, we still look at the photographs in amazement, for they show an ancient age. They show that belief and imagination can awaken the darkest heart. I can remember seeing them all those years ago, and I still have a photograph on the wall, a print of one of them, because it reminds me that there is magic in the world. And no matter how dark the world gets, there is magic if you look to find it. I hope you've enjoyed this story, my friends. Tomorrow there will be another. You can find out more information about me at welshstoryteller.com. My name is Owen Staton. You can join my Patreon followers at patreon.com/Owen Staton 7 or buy me a Ko-fi at kofi.com/Owen Staton. But please, my friends, if you can, visit the link and make a small donation to the Police Rehabilitation Centre at Flint House. That would mean the world to me. In the meantime, I will see you tomorrow at the time between times. The time it's neither night nor day, but the sun has gone and the sky is grey. No star.